Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock tomorrow morning, and of course at midnight it is our hour, and you and me together. It is your chance to talk back. So a full hour of just you and me, and I really want to talk to you about this Nigel Farage story at midnight. The whole "it was just banter," the whole "I was a kid." And I want to know if you buy. I mean, of course, he's denying that he believes he did anything wrong, that he didn't mean to hurt anybody. But some of the stuff that was going on there was, if it is true, is pretty hurtful stuff, right? But was it of its time? Is this a kind of witch hunt for Nigel Farage? Is it possible to change? I suppose that's the question. When we were kids, we weren't putting everything out on social media. I feel sorry for kids of the future who every single thought they've ever had has gone on to social media, and they're never going to be able to escape it. So I really want to ask you, I mean, this banter, were you a perpetrator of it when you were at school? Were you a victim of it when you were at school? Did you see it just as banter? I mean, banter was pretty brutal. I seem to remember at school I was quite sort of quiet really until I was about 14. But I was quite quiet and shy, so I witnessed it. I certainly wasn't part of it, and I certainly didn't get any because I was too boring. But were you a perpetrator of it? Do you see this something that this is what happened when we were kids, and that it wouldn't happen now? Is it possible to change? Is it possible to hold those thoughts, to have those thoughts, if indeed Mr. Farage had those thoughts when he was a teenager? Is it possible to hold those thoughts and to change your attitude later? Is it possible that he may have done that? Or do you believe that once somebody makes comments like that he's being accused of, that is you, that's you said? Give me a call. I'd love to hear from you on this. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. We were talking in the newsroom about if this had been any other political leader that had said those things when they were a kid, I wonder if they would have had to have resigned by now. But can this form of racism or anti-Semitism, we were singing songs about gas chambers, can that just be seen as banter of its time, that it certainly wouldn't be acceptable now? I'm not sure it was acceptable then, but it was accepted perhaps more than it would be today. And do you have young people in your life, children, grandchildren, and you worry about banter now? Can they banter? What is banter now? How does that work? Like I said, that's coming up at midnight, and so give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Let me tell you what else is coming up in the programme this evening. We have Vincent Moss coming into the studio to go through the newspapers as former political editor. I'm sure he'll have something to say about that. We're going to be looking ahead to that glorious budget. I mean, aren't we excited? Yeah. And also looking at the number of missing children there are in the care system. So we're going to be looking at that story as well. It's a huge, huge story. But first, I wanted to address this. Politicians and corruption. They do seem to go hand in hand, don't they? It does seem to go hand in hand. 2 members of the House of Lords now have been suspended in the latest Cash for Access scandal. The former Army Chief, Lord Dannatt, knew Richard Dannatt, I knew his son, and Lord Evans of Watford were found to have broken rules on providing parliamentary services in return for payment or reward. In fact, Lord Evans was financially involved in one of the companies that he was actively supporting through Parliament. Only a few days ago, the Standard Commissioner also said that MPs should really stop. It's not up to them to tell them to stop taking freebies, but they ought to really think about stopping taking freebies in order to boost public trust. Well, I can only tell you that in my entire career, being either a reporter or being a presenter, I am forbidden from accepting any gift over the value of 50 quid. And if I do get sent a gift, which I never do, by the way, to the value of over 50 quid, I have to inform my bosses. It is written into my contract, and it always has been. It doesn't matter where I am. So journalists certainly are not allowed to accept gifts, and we never have been. So why is it so impossible to say that MPs shouldn't accept any gifts over 50 quid, 100 quid? Any more than that, they have to refer themselves to whoever is going to give them permission or nay. So I don't understand it. Why they're just blanket allowed to accept tickets to Wimbledon or to pop concerts that nobody else can get to. It doesn't make any sense to me, because it would be very, very easy to stop that. And we don't trust parliamentarians who get gifts. Of course we don't, because it curries favour. Absolutely it would. The other thing that I find absolutely extraordinary, and we did put in a Freedom of Information request, we did send in a request asking how many current MPs have criminal records, and the response was, I can confirm we do not hold information about the number of MPs convicted of criminal offences as MPs are not obliged to disclose this information. Well, if you're working in a nursery school or as a teacher or in hundreds of other jobs, you have to disclose your criminal past. But members of Parliament who we provide all this trust to don't have to do that, which I find, again, extraordinary. So to discuss this with me further is Rainbow Murray, what a lovely name, Professor of Politics at Queen Mary University of London. Rainbow, it's very nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Tell me, I mean, let's start with criminal records, right? Why is it that many of us would have to do a criminal records check in order to be employed, but it has been decided, and this was only last week, that politicians don't have to declare if they have any criminal past?
It's a really difficult issue, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you want the politicians who represent you to be squeaky clean, because they are representing the nation. They are responsible for the laws that they are then asking everyone else to uphold. So it's not much to ask that the lawmakers should not be lawbreakers. On the other hand, we want our representatives to represent the entire country in all its diversity. So there is an argument for saying, well, you know, the population includes people who have committed crimes, and maybe it's not necessary to exclude someone who has served their time and is no longer a threat to the nation from being part of that representative process.
But shouldn't we know, for example,
we shouldn't ask people to declare it, doesn't it?
Exactly, because shouldn't we know, let's say somebody has been found criminally responsible for fraud, who then ends up working in a department, you know, that then looks at people's tax affairs, and maybe they've been tax fraud. It's something that I suspect that a lot of people who work in the Inland Revenue have had to declare whether they've had any criminal behaviour, and yet the MPs responsible for that department wouldn't have to declare that.
Yeah, I think it's an anomaly. When you describe it, it's hard to justify. So I think probably the reality is that most people weren't aware of this loophole, and if they were, they would argue for it to be closed.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like yet again, the political classes are proving that there's one rule for them and an entirely different set of rules made by them for the rest of us.
And that's never more true than the rule that says that you can't be prosecuted for things that you have done as part of your time in office. I mean, we've seen that with people trying to get into politics. I mean, not so much in the UK, but I mean, Donald Trump's an excellent example, trying to get into politics in a way to avoid prosecution for crimes committed during previous office or before office, because then you have that immunity. And you can argue that the immunity is really important, that you need to be able to legislate without fear. But you could equally argue that no one should be above the law, especially those who are making it.
Exactly that. It is especially those. I mean, there was a whole argument at one point, I remember covering this, I mean, years ago on a different radio station, about police officers with a criminal record. And I remember doing a phone-in on it, and a lot of people said, actually, I don't mind police officers having a criminal record because then they know how criminals think. I think that was the general consensus. But still, we would need to know that they had a previous criminal record, because then we know what we're up against, and the bosses would know what to look out for in case they crossed the line again. And I think that would I think if we asked the public if they would want MPs to have to declare a criminal record, that the majority of the public would say, if I have to, you have to.
I think that's true. I think people expect quite a high standard of integrity from politicians. They are people who are meant to lead by example. And occasionally I think we hold them to maybe a higher standard than we would expect of the people around us, and that's a good thing. You know, we want our politicians to serve the greater good rather than their self-interest. The problem is that politicians, like everybody else, are humans who are vulnerable to temptation and the odd act of misbehavior. But if someone has an actual criminal record, it seems to be in the public interest that we should be aware of that when deciding whether this person is fit to represent the nation.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with that more. What about freebies? You know, the free gear, Kia, or Angela Rayner getting clothes, Rachel Reeves being gifted clothes from Lord Ali, Keir Starmer getting, and they said, oh, we're going to have a whole new, we're not going to be sleazy, it's all going to be appropriate, and Keir Starmer had to pay back £6,000 worth of gifts. It wasn't all of the money, and he's still taking tickets to Arsenal matches, which I think he could happily pay for, but he continues to accept free tickets for that. Should that be banned?
I mean, everybody loves a freebie. I wish I got more freebies. I don't. If I did, I would probably find it quite hard to turn them down. I think most of us would.
But that's why, as a journalist, it's we are told if you are offered a gift of more than the value of 50 quid, and that hasn't moved in years, by the way, you have to tell your boss, because it could be seen as a bribe.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If someone offered me a freebie, it's not going to have any repercussions for other people, because I don't have the power to change the laws based on who has bought my favour. But when you're a politician, that is actually true, that you can persuade somebody who is in some respect indebted to you that they then owe you something, that there's a quid pro quo.
Yeah.
When people are in positions of power, being in, or even being perceived to be in someone's debt, makes them very vulnerable to accusations of corruption, of favoritism, of being bribed. And you also have to ask, what is the money being spent on? I think there is a distinction between Arsenal tickets and clothes. The clothes argument is that we expect politicians to look a certain way. When you're the Prime Minister, you do obviously get a pretty generous salary. When you're a parliamentary candidate, before you even receive an MP salary, it can be quite difficult to finance the wardrobe that comes with an election campaign if you're on a modest income. And so at that point, if someone within the party is saying, yes, we will help candidates to look the look to help them prepare for office, it's a delicate one, because some people just aren't going to get into office without some financial support. But then you have to say, well, who bankrolled their campaign? Once you're in office, an MP salary is obviously larger than the majority of the population. So I think most people would bring out a tiny violin when they heard that MPs were struggling with the cost of office. But it's also true that most of us could get a fairly cheap suit and wear it to work without consequence. Sometimes we expect a higher dress code for politicians, especially if they have to attend a lot of public events, and that can put pressure on finances even on someone on quite a generous salary. But these still don't really sit well with the public. They still hear, well, people on this generous salary are being given extra treats that then leave them vulnerable to these accusations of bribery. We do expect politicians to declare things that they've received, but arguably maybe we should just ban it altogether and say that they can't have. And
yeah, I mean, if you've got a black box, I mean, I know the black box industry has been lobbying government for decades to try and get us all to have black boxes in our cars. They're getting closer and closer to it because they had this technology and nobody to buy it, right? So they've been lobbying for literally for as long as this thing has been invented. And you've got that company who then buys the transport minister a couple of tickets to Wimbledon, maybe a shooting holiday and whatever. But if that's what they fancy, they find out they're very clever. These lobbying companies, they are extremely rich. They know exactly how to push buttons, and suddenly it's on. Suddenly we've got electric vehicles from tomorrow potentially being charged 3p a mile, and in the future that will mean having a black box in their car. So I'm just using that as an example. I don't know for certain that's happened, but I have my suspicions. But you've got people whose only intention is to get things through government, and how they do it is by sweetening the deal, cozying up, being pally with, buying special little gifts for, hampers over Christmas that are worth 250 quid. All of those things that go on that do sweeten. I mean, you can't help it. Like, if somebody bought me a hamper for 250 quid, I'd really like them. Yeah. Right?
And the question then is, what happens to all the people who can't afford a hamper that costs 250 quid, who can't buy that influence? Yeah. Those are the voices that don't get heard. They're the ones that get overlooked. And so it reinforces the role of money in politics. Yeah. And it means that some people just get left out. And that's inherently unfair. And it's also dangerous, because the people who have the most money in society are generally the people who already have significant power and influence. And the people who don't are probably the people most in need of good policymakers to protect them. Mm. But their interests get overlooked because they don't have that lobbying power. And I think that is a critical weakness of our current democracy.
And I think just easily solved. Put a cash limit on it, 50 quid, that's it. Any more than that, you have to go to the parliamentary office and ask. What about, though, these lords? So it's not always gifts, it can sometimes be cash. This is not something new to us, unfortunately. As you said, these people are human beings. But the idea that two lords, sitting in that extremely privileged chamber, being paid extremely well to be in that chamber, are potentially stuffing brown envelopes into their back pockets in order to get people to talk to other people. I mean, that is sleazy, isn't it? If they'd be caught out again by undercover reporters.
It is particularly embarrassing. One of them a military leader.
A brilliant military leader as well, Lord Dennis.
Yeah.
Embarrassing for him.
if anyone knows how to follow rules, it ought to be a soldier.
Yeah.
It's sort of inherent. So I think that's, there's no excuse for it. There's no excuse for it. They've both been given a slap on the wrist. Neither of them has contested it because they know they've done wrong. It's embarrassing for them. It pretty much proves the mantra, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Is there any way around this? Is there, I mean, it's all very well to say these are just human beings like the rest of us. I always joke that I would be incredibly corruptible if I was a politician, but I absolutely know that I wouldn't. In fact, I would be the opposite. I'd be livid if somebody did try to bribe me. But is there any way around this?
We can try, I think, to punish those who get caught, but it's also, I think, in some respects linked to the kind of people that we get in politics in the first place, which itself is linked to the fact that it's quite hard to get into politics. It's not something that everybody can do. It requires a lot of resources up front to get you into politics, and so that leads to two kinds of people who enter politics. One is people who had a lot of resources up front, for whom an entry into politics is often a pay cut. Considering how much higher the MP salary is than the average salary in the UK, for that to be a pay cut shows how well resourced these people are. So then they're thinking, well, I need some recompense for the fact that I've taken a pay cut to serve my country. Then there's the other kind of person who doesn't come with big resources up front and has got themselves potentially into debt or made enormous sacrifices to get there, who then perhaps feels that they need some recompense for everything that they have sacrificed to get there. So maybe we also need to think about how to make politics more accessible to people so that they don't feel like they need to reward themselves for the journey they've taken to get there, but also so that there aren't many good, honest people with high moral standards, people with high levels of integrity, who simply cannot get over the hurdles of getting into politics, or who are so turned off by the dirtiness of it all that they decide they would rather do something else with their lives.
Yeah, I think that most people, I think if you want to be a politician, that should bar you immediately from ever being allowed to be one. Great to talk to you, Rainbow. Thank you very much indeed. That's Rainbow Murray there, Professor of Politics at Queen Mary University of London. Quick break, back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, and coming up at midnight it is Talk Back. It's your opportunity to do just that. So we're going to be talking about Nigel Farage. When does banter become abuse? If you were a victim during your school days of banter, could you give me a call? I'd love to hear from you. If you were a perpetrator of banter, I'd love to hear from you, because I'd like to hear because we're judging Nigel Farage on something that he allegedly said. He's denying that he said it with any malice, but there are 20 witnesses saying that he did say terrible things. That he's saying, look, I was a teenager, I'm just going into my teens, there was a lot of banter going around. I never intentionally hurt anybody, although again there's a report that as a prefect he put a boy into detention because of the colour of his skin. You know, there's things like that. But he was a teenager. I mean, that sort of behaviour is reprehensible, but is it possible to change? Is it possible that he was like that then and isn't like that now? Is it possible that you did the same thing, that you learnt that in those days it wasn't acceptable, it was never acceptable, but it was accepted that there would be that level of nastiness in the playground? And do you have children now? Do you have to explain to them about what banter is, what safe banter is, what teasing is? I mean, we used to take the mick out of each other all the time. That's probably unacceptable now. But it was very much part of a language of friendship, actually. But I'd love to hear from you on this, because this is actually a much more complicated question than you think at first. Because times have changed, but is it acceptable that Nigel Farage is being accused of saying these things with malice? 0344 499 1000, and you can text me as well, put the word talk and then your message to 87222. Right, I have got a fabulous chance for you now to win an incredible trip of a lifetime to Las Vegas. Your journey kicks off in style with exclusive lounge access at Heathrow, followed by an upper-class comfort flight with lie-flat beds and top-tier service all the way to Vegas. When you land, you'll check into a luxurious spa villa for 4 nights, cheer from the stands as the Las Vegas Raiders take on the Kansas City Chiefs, and we're even chucking in £5,000 worth of cash to spend in Vegas. And we all know what that means. So clear your calendar, January 2nd to the 7th, 26, because this could be the best start to your new year ever. Good luck, and here's how to enter.
21 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Text at £2 plus standard network rate. Bill payer's permission required. Or call 03434239761. Calls are charged at standard rate. All entries must be received by the 28th of November at 4 p.m. This is a network promotion. Run across TalkSport, Virgin Radio UK and Talk. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. Right now on Talk, you're with Petrie, and coming up, we're going to be looking at what we can expect from the budget tomorrow. I'm just grateful that it will be over tomorrow. I mean, we've all been so worn down by it, haven't we? But we're going to be looking at what we can expect. And also, just to remind you that the fabulous Vincent Moss will be here in the studio to go through the papers for Wednesday. But right now, data was released today by Missing People that shows last year nearly 2,400 children who have been trafficked or have arrived in the UK alone to claim asylum have gone missing whilst being looked after by local authorities. According to the charity, someone is reported missing every 90 seconds. 70,000 of them are children. Susanna Jury joins me now, Director of Policy and Development at Missing People. Susanna, nice to meet you. These make for horrific readings, don't they? I mean, these numbers are just mind-blowing.
Absolutely. At Missing People, we are supporting people every day who are missing and at huge risk of harm. And as you say, there's so many different reasons why people go missing. We know that around 2,000 trafficked or unaccompanied children are going missing from care. And that's linked to either fears for their own safety in the accommodation they're put in. It might be that they're being forced to go missing by their exploiters as well. And often they stay missing for a really long time because they've fallen back into the hands of the people that have trafficked them, and they're being further exploited and abused. So that is really terrifying. But as you say, the scale of missing itself is huge. The police have reports of 330,000 people going missing every year. And a really big proportion of those incidents are for children. So around 60% are 12 to 17-year-olds. And they're at such high risk of harm when they're missing as well. We know that people exploit and abuse missing children, but often they may also be missing because they're in mental health crisis and as such can be a risk to themselves.
A lot of people will be shocked, though, that a lot of these children, that particularly we're talking about today, that are in the care system, I mean, it doesn't sound like the system is fit for purpose if children can just go missing. And as you said, some of them may take themselves out of an authority home, but others may be taken from that home. Mm-hmm. What's going on there? Why does it appear to be so easy?
Well, a lot of it is linked to the situation people are in. So children go missing from care often because they've been placed really far away from home, whether if they're a UK child, and they're actually going missing because they just want to be part of their support network, see friends and family, and they're not able to do that otherwise. Others are going missing because they might be being placed in really unsuitable situations, particularly older teenagers, 16, 17-year-olds, can be placed in something called supported accommodation, which is often really not great quality. I was hearing yesterday of a young woman who was going missing from that accommodation because she had bed bugs in it. It can also be shared with adults and really feel unsafe for those young people. So sometimes they're escaping that. And for trafficked and unaccompanied children, they're also really scared because often they don't speak the language, they don't understand who's here to help them, and what support's available to them. And of course, they've been trafficked or come here through some means where those people who got them here want to exploit them again and abuse them and want them to go missing in order to make that happen.
So, I mean, is this across all age groups of young people?
Yes, missing is most common for those teenagers, and it can be for a whole host of reasons. It can be problems at home. 1 in 5 of those 70,000 children are being kicked out of home. It can be linked to mental health issues, exploitation as well. So we know that sexual exploitation, criminal exploitations like county lines is a really big factor in young people going missing. And when they are missing, they're preyed upon as well. So they can end up being exploited because they're looking for somewhere to stay. There isn't anywhere safe. And I'll never forget a young woman who told me she had a choice of staying the night, sitting on a cold, dark, wet street, or going off with a stranger who'd come up to her. And that's a horrendous choice to know that children are having to make.
And what's the gender divide here as well? Is it mostly young women that are missing and exploited, or is it across both genders?
It's definitely across both genders. So with teenagers, it's slightly more young men than young women who are going missing. But with adults who go missing, it's significantly more men than women. And one of the biggest reasons for that is people going missing in mental health crisis. Sadly, quite a lot of people go missing with a plan of taking their own lives. And the most likely group for that to happen is middle-aged men. So that's a real concern for us as well. At the charity, we provide support in partnership with the Samaritans to try and reach out and support those adults who are missing and in real crisis.
So what is the process if a young person goes, let's say a 14-year-old in care goes missing? I mean, is that an immediate Amber Alert or our equivalent of it? Is it taken seriously, or is it like, oh, this is another 14-year-old runaway?
It really varies, you're right. It's not always one approach or another. So often the police will expect that carers will try and find that young person before they report them to the police. And when they do go through to the police will decide the level of risk that young person faces. Maybe they know they've already been exploited, they're at risk in terms of their mental health or other reasons. And the police will decide then what kind of response to give if they're thought of as high, medium or low risk. And high risk can be, everything is thrown at it to find that young person. So officers will be deployed to try and find them. You can even have, if they're considered to be particularly vulnerable, helicopters going up looking for them, and searches on the street, appeals to find them to the public, and so on. More commonly, it's not a high-risk incident. It's more likely for a 14-year-old to be seen as medium risk. And there is sometimes an issue that, of course, the police have got really limited information. They don't always know everything that you would hope that they would know. And sometimes children are at really high risk. When they're missing, they are being exploited, they're being abused. And there isn't the urgency of response because that information just isn't known to the police, particularly sometimes for young people in care who just no one knows what they're going through and the situations that they're in.
I mean, they're also, fairly invisible children, aren't they? And there's certainly history to back up that care homes for young people, for children, can be magnets to the wrong people. Jimmy Savile, for example, grooming gangs across the country, as another example. Are these young people protected in any way from, or educated in any way about, look, there are grooming gangs, there are people who will offer you a phone or whatever, and you can end up in a prostitution ring, or you can end up working in a weed factory or on county lines. What protections are there? Because people will always exploit the vulnerable.
Absolutely, and there are a lot of brilliant professionals out there, both in the care sector, in the police, and in the third sector, like at Missing People. And we work really hard to get those messages out to young people and to make sure they're aware of how they can stay safe. But also, if they are missing, if they are in danger, that we're here to help them every day of the year. Our support is available to them, and we can help them get safe in a crisis, to talk through their options. Without judgment, in a confidential way. So young people can access that support by calling or texting us on 116 000, and that's 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. every day.
And what can the public do? I mean, what can we do if we suspect that we see a child that doesn't belong with an adult? Or it's very difficult, isn't it, to get involved?
Absolutely, but I think it's always possible to see if you can just ask a child if they're okay, if as you say, that there's a concern that they're not with someone that they should be, but also just perhaps to, if you're really worried, to tell the police, because that is one of the things that we know has a really big impact. So, for example, with young people being sexually exploited, there's been an amazing campaign being run by the Children's Society, a charity we work with, to make sure taxi drivers, receptionists in hotels are kind of wise to the possible risks of someone being exploited and know what to do if that's a concern of theirs. But yeah, we would certainly say, if you're worried about a young person who may be missing, who may be being exploited, then don't hesitate to talk to the police about that.
Brilliant, thank you very much indeed. And people can get in touch with you at missingpeople, all one word, .org.uk, so we can give that information out. And also there is a Safe Call appeal to raise funds for a new free service offering support and safety for those children. There's more on that on the website. Or if you do want to report somebody missing, as Susanna was just saying, it's 116 000. Thank you very much indeed for joining me this evening. Susanna Drury, their Director of Policy and Development at Missing People. Quick break, back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you. Coming up at the top of the hour, Vincent Moss will be here to go through the papers. But for now, this time tomorrow, it will be over. Well, I mean, we'll be still picking through it, right? But it will finally be this budget that Rachel Reeves is going to stand up and deliver tomorrow. It feels like it has been decades, doesn't it, since the last one, which was only a year ago. It's been going on and on and on. And not just that, all the leakage, that's such a horrible word, isn't it? But anyway, the leaks that have come out about what they're going to do, to flying the kite, testing it out to see if we're going to be angry about it or not. So tomorrow, we will know, this time tomorrow, we will know just what this budget is going to cost us. But do we know now what it might cost us after so many of these kite flying exercises? Do we really have a clue as to what might come down the pike tomorrow? Well, Christopher Martin joins me now, economics professor at the University of Bath. Christopher, it's been a long time, hasn't it? I feel I've aged about 50 years since the last budget.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all just want to find out what's in the thing now, don't we?
Enough already. Just
Absolutely.
Really. Do you think this is, a friend of mine asked me today, she said, is this part of the plan to wear us down so that whatever happens tomorrow, it's not quite as, it might be horrible, but it's not quite as bad as we all thought it might possibly be? Could that be the purpose of all this nonsense?
It could be like that. Budgets, I think, have always been like this, except that now it's being done in the open. There always used to be this thing called PERDA, if you remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Chancellor and the Treasury would be locked away. They would go through all of this stuff, and then they'd come out and tell us what they were actually going to do. Now it's all just done in real time on social media, and it's not great, is it?
Oh, God, no. So she's going to unveil her second, again, it's only her second budget, oh my God. There are lots of things that people have been speculating about, but what do you think is actually going to happen? It's not going to be pretty, is it, for any of us?
No, it's not going to be pretty. I think there's still an awful lot we don't know, because the body we're really not hearing from is the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility. And an awful lot of the decisions that are going to follow are going to come from what their assumptions are. And we still really don't know what those are. So it's still very much up in the air. I'm kind of expecting, because of all these leaks, tax increases of something like 25 billion spread across different things. But to be blunt, who really knows at this stage?
Will she be forgiven? I mean, the last budget, the £40 billion budget, she said that's it. That's once in a Parliament budget. I'm not going to come back at you for more money. I mean, I even said then, she'll just say circumstances have changed, because that's what they always say. And indeed, that's what we will be told tomorrow. The world has changed, there's tariffs, there's the war in Ukraine, there's defence budgets, there's all of those things. They've always got those excuses. But will she be forgiven for trying to raise another 25, 30 billion?
Interesting question. I'm probably the wrong person to ask it to, because I'm a humble economist. I'm not a political scientist. But playing devil's advocate and running a defence for the Chancellor, I think we all understand that we are not taxed sufficiently to provide the level of public services that we expect. And sooner or later, somehow, something has to give. Either public services have to be scaled back, or in some sense, taxes have to rise. So probably no, politically she won't be forgiven, but there is an economic inevitability about all of this, isn't there?
I mean, I do agree with you, and I think that's always been the difficult balance. As we look at the Nordic countries and we go, wow, look at the public services they've got, but we very rarely talk about the taxation they have to pay to be able to afford that. But I think in this country we feel like we're constantly being taxed more but we don't necessarily get more for it. I think if there was a correlation, if we could see that our money wasn't being wasted, if we felt that by paying a bit more means that we would get a bit more, I think everybody would be on board with that. But there is a sense, isn't there, that we just keep paying and paying and paying, and more taxes and more hidden taxes and more sneaky taxes. They're not upfront with us, they lie to us. Freezing those tax thresholds is sneaky. It always has been. It's a lie told to the public that we're not raising your tax. Do you think that's part of the problem with budgets in this country, is that there isn't a blatant honesty about it?
I think that's perfectly true. I'd say there isn't a lack of honesty because fundamentally political parties don't trust the electorate. A lot of this stems from the last election where both parties said they would not raise taxes. Every think tank, every informed commentator in the country said that's total nonsense. We have to raise taxes. We all knew that taxes would have to rise, but politicians felt that in order to be elected, they had to claim they wouldn't have to raise taxes.
But we've got a situation, I mean, just everybody can see this situation, right? So we pay more in VED, that'll definitely be going up because that's an easy one, tax the car owner. The vehicle excise duty, which used to be linked to better roads, we're paying way more now and getting way less. How does that work?
Okay, let me change focus slightly.
Right.
One of the things a chancellor is supposed to do is get the economy growing. Since 2008, the UK has struggled to get the economy growing, and there are differing views on what will grow the economy. The chancellor has been quite open. She has said what will get the economy growing is investment, and fundamentally the government has a role in investment, in power, in infrastructure, in transport. And by doing that, they will kickstart growth via investment. So they're very much of the school of thought that says growth comes from investment and not from the school of thought that says growth comes from lower taxes. So one thing I'll be looking at tomorrow is what happens to public investment. That has been increased. For me, what's important is that public investment is not cut tomorrow.
Again, we're talking about public investment or government investment. It's all our money, right? They don't have any money. And again, we're exhausted by seeing things like HS2, things like the £35 billion COVID app, which was a complete waste of money, the £25 million way back in the day, shows how old I am, NHS computer that ended up in a skip. You know, this is also part of the problem, isn't it? Again, if we felt that our money was going to be well spent, we wouldn't perhaps be so ungracious about handing it over.
I think that's a fair point. I think that's always been true. Things are a bit more heightened these days. I guess if I was making a counter to you, I'd say, yes, HS2 looks like a huge disaster. Let's look at the Elizabeth line in London. Everybody complained like crazy about the Elizabeth line. It was delayed, it was expensive. But now we have the Elizabeth line. It's absolutely wonderful, isn't it? So when a big infrastructure investment program works, it does wonders for an economy.
But it's also very expensive. Whenever the government builds anything, it tends to cost way more and take way longer, the Elizabeth line being a salient point. If it was a private company doing it, I'm just saying, the government is not very good at building stuff.
To some extent, that's true. I'd say there's an awful lot of evidence that simply says building large projects is difficult. Big, complicated projects are hard. Governments tend to do a lot more of that than private sector companies. So generally, governments are less efficient by that thing. But I think fundamentally, I honestly don't think a private sector company could do a big, complicated project any better. After all, the way the government does it is it gets in a bunch of private sector companies and build it.
Who then charge us? It's like a wedding, isn't it? You say you're having a wedding, and suddenly everything is 10 times more expensive, and it's the same with it's a government contract. We'll shove on a bit of cash there.
It's true. I mean, governments are very bad at negotiating. That's absolutely true. Yeah, no question.
I do not understand why, when they've got so much of our money to do that. So basically, one more thing you'll be looking for tomorrow. So you'll be looking to make sure that public spending on infrastructure remains. What else will you be looking at?
I think I'm going to be looking at what's going to be happening with local authorities. Because there's an awful lot of concern where people say, look, there's huge amounts of public expenditure, but for me, nothing is changing. And if we think about a lot of the stuff that we worry about, roads, we worry about our high street, an awful lot of that goes through local government, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now, as we all know, local government has had their budgets squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. Yeah. So,
and they've also wasted a lot as well. I'm sorry to cut you off, Christopher, but I'm right up against the clock. Christopher Martin there, economics professor at the University of Bath. So public spending on infrastructure and local councils. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about that. I'll be back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, and in an hour's time, of course, it is your opportunity to talk back. And we're going to be talking about Nigel Farage. Of course we are, because we've got some clips of him as well in an interview about these alleged comments that he made when he was a child, or a young teenager anyway. I mean, it's pretty, if he did say it, he says he didn't say any of it with intent to hurt anybody. I think it's almost difficult to say it without knowing it's going to hurt somebody, but he's calling it banter. And look, banter was pretty brutal when we were kids, right? It was. It just was. So is it of any value to look at what Nigel Farage may or may not have said when he was at his posh boys' school when he was a teenager? Is that of any value? Is it possible to change? Were you a perpetrator of such banter when you were a kid? Look, we were talking a long time ago, right? He's saying it's 49 years. I mean, that would put him at 10 years old, I think, or 11 years old. But you know, he was a prefect and he apparently did some things there. There are 20 complainants saying that he did this. The Guardian has obviously gone big on this story. The Telegraph also is looking into this. And it's kind of exploded a bit. But is it of any value to attach what Nigel Farage may or may not have said then to who he is now? Is it possible to change? Is it possible that all young people think and do horrible things, and that actually that's not who we are as adults? And it also got me thinking really about, if you've got young people in your life right now, what do you tell them about banter? Does banter even happen anymore? I mean, I don't think it happens in this newsroom anymore. I mean, it does with my team because it's just us, so we banter all the time. Quite ruthlessly, but that's because we're close, we're friends, and we like each other, and we can take the mick. But none of us would probably do it during the day if there are other people around. But is banter now dead? Has it gone? You know, is it? And is it good that it's gone? Were you a victim of this so-called banter, or like I said, were you a perpetrator of it? And you just think, well, that's what I said then, it's not who I am now. So listen, give me a call on this, 0344 499 1000, and you can text me as well, put the word talk and then your message to 87222. Well, with me in the studio now is Vincent Moss, former political editor. Vincent, banter in the newsrooms, you know, you're same age as me, roughly. It happened, right?
It did. It happened a lot. It happens far less now. People are very cautious about what they say in workplaces and newsrooms and playgrounds. But I think that the mistake Nigel Farage made after these allegations initially emerged in The Guardian was he started by denying it, really. And The Guardian had spoken to him. Michael Crick, his independent biographer, had written about it as well, I think in about 2013. I think it was a mistake to deny it. He should have said, I was very young, it was a different time, racial slurs, wrong as they are, were used by children in the playground. Yeah. I regret it, I'm sorry for it, I'm a different person now. He didn't do that. He said I didn't do it, and that's always a mistake, because I think the latest report from The Guardian is, of course, more people have now emerged saying he did make these allegations. I think some of the defence has been, I was only 13. Well, I think some of it also refers to his time as, there was a letter written, he would be unsuitable as a prefect. I think you're a bit older than that if you're going to be made a prefect at a fee-paying school. So he's not handled it very well, but his supporters will say it's just the liberal elite out to get him again. This is what happens, a sort of then mount a Trumpian defence. This is what opponents of his come out and say. But they're serious allegations. They will upset a lot of people. They probably upset a lot of people at the time. And it's a good point you make. Do people change? Some of the people I was at school with were pretty nasty after they left school. Few did change. You say leopards can't change the spot. Some do, some don't.
I mean, that's the interesting point, isn't it? And I've used the term, it was accepted in those days, but that doesn't make it acceptable, right? And I think that's an interesting point, because in some of the interviews that I've seen with Nigel Farage and a really good reporter pushing back on him and going, well, what do you mean you didn't mean it in a nasty way? If you're saying things like that, how can that not be? And words to that effect. And he looks very awkward, actually. And so, yeah, why not just say, look, I don't remember the exact words I used. I probably was a horrible little scrote and you know, showing off. I may have said some horrible things that I would never think of saying today. You know, kids grow up. And that is interesting, isn't it, that the immediate defence was I didn't do it.
And that always gets you into trouble, usually, in politics.
It's the lie.
The safest way is to apologise, act contrite, even if you're not sometimes, and try and move things on. And I think that his denials just sparked further search for other people who were at school with him, and further people have already emerged, and doubtless more will do. It's not been handled well. Question is, will it damage him in the long run? Well, I think people who like Nigel Farage and are minded to vote reform, will it stop them? Probably not. Will it sort of re-embolden people who never liked Nigel Farage to think, I always thought that he was didn't like his views, they weren't palatable, and those people will probably think the same. So I'm not sure how much it changes, but they are serious allegations. But I think he should have just said, it was different times, I regret it, I'm sorry. I'm a different person now, and of course I condemn that sort of language. Would have been very easy to say that.
It would have been very easy to say. So it's generally the cover-up, isn't it? Oh, that's the microphone falling off the table. It is always the cover-up that gets you, isn't it? I mean, we've seen that recently. But it is interesting though, because it makes me think about how when I was in newsrooms and I was the only female reporter in a newsroom full of men, if I hadn't been able to give as good as I got, I wouldn't have got as far as I have. So banter was an extremely important tool, if you like, to show that you were robust, to show you could take it, to do those things. And I just think those days have gone, and I'm not entirely sure that's for the better. I mean, racial slurs, absolutely no place for those at all, never was. But I'm talking about the kind of teasing banter that goes on between colleagues, slightly inappropriate perhaps, but nothing that would be deemed sort of racial or misogynistic.
Well, that's right. I think the key is people don't know where the line is drawn anymore. So in any workplace, most workplaces, if you work there a long time, you get a nickname, and people give you nicknames. Some of them are funny, some of them are very funny, some of them are a bit rude, but don't cross the line. Some of them are very rude. But where's that line now? And I think people are so wary of where that line is that they're very reluctant to say anything. So, for example, if you were perhaps a little bit short, they might call you Lofty. You know, there are all sorts of other nicknames. Might be a play of words on your name, might be something your name rhymes with, all sorts of things. I think people are so cautious now that they're very reluctant to say anything, and it makes the workplace a little bit greyer. Does it make it a little bit safer? Possibly, but it's not as much fun, and I think you lose some of that camaraderie that people probably most enjoyed about the workplace. Exactly.
I mean, I certainly know that when I've worked through big disasters or very stressful times in a newsroom, with Diana's death or a terror attack or something big that has happened, it is that camaraderie and that banter actually that keeps the energy going in somewhere like, and it probably does in a hospital as well, or somewhere like that, where you need to keep moving forward and you're exhausted or you don't know what, there's I think it was within seconds of Diana dying, the first jokes were being told. Now, a lot of people go, oh, that's disgusting, that is awful, but that's also gallows humour. That's also part of getting you through difficult situations. When I was in a war situation, again, the gallows humour was, I mean, I couldn't repeat the songs that we sang and the jokes that we told because they were abhorrent. But they were just that. They were just as a means of bonding, of getting us through something. And I worry that is an important part of being in those situations that's now gone.
Exactly, and also I think if you're in any workplace, if you work in a supermarket or a shop with regular people, you want a bit of a joke and a bit of banter with people there. It makes the day go a bit faster, especially if the job's a bit boring and a bit repetitive. You need some of that, but it's just a question of how far you go, and people are a bit alarmed about that. And in the past, it has famously come down to, if not racial slurs, it's come down to where you live or something. I'm sure that Yorkshire people are taking the mickey out of people from the other side of the Pennines all the time.
Yeah, of course.
So there's always an element of you're a bit different, you come from somewhere else. And even if you go back to the times of the Romans and the Greeks, they were always ripping it out of each other, calling each other oily Greeks and the rest of it. So the idea of banter and sort of taking the mickey out of people goes back centuries, really. It's a shame, I think we've lost it in some ways, but getting back to the Nigel Farage issue, I think that he's handled it very badly, and he should apologise and just say, I was very young, I was stupid, and it was a different time.
And singing about gas chambers wouldn't pass the "it was only banter" checklist, would it? And things like that. I worry for young people today who put every thought they've ever had on social media, because that people have already lost their jobs over what they said when they were a teenager.
Well, that's right, and it's also you say something and it's got
there
into the
forever.
ether in a second. You write something down on social media and it is there forever, and also it loses context because if you say something a bit near the edge, but you say it with a smile on your face, or you're saying it to 2 or 3 people that you know very well, it's fine. But if you stick it on social media, and lots of people without a sense of humour or don't know you're being sarcastic or you're making a reference to a film or something or an old friend, just look at it in black and white, literally, and say that's offensive to me and can cause you a world of pain.
Yeah. It is a really difficult, isn't it, when does banter become abuse? And I suppose it becomes abuse at the point that somebody feels abused.
Exactly, and different people have
different threshold.
Exactly. So some people may not be offended at anything, and some people may take offence at the slightest thing. So that again means, as most people, if they're wise, have got an abundance of caution over these things. But it's sad in a way because you should be able to have frank and funny conversations with colleagues, workmates, family and friends, but you just never know when somebody's going to take an offence. And it'd be interesting to see where people think that bar is set, because there's no doubt that some of the things that Nigel Farage is alleged to have said would cross the line in 95% of most people's view, I would imagine. Some of the allegations of some of the remarks were anti-Semitic. That's intolerable. Some of them were allegedly racist and sound racist, although he would deny that I think he used a strange phrase, he didn't directly abuse people, which is a strange formula.
Very strange, very strange. Yeah, it's just one of those things that's a bit awkward because, you know, I talked to a lot of people on this programme, and people say, you know, back in the day it was okay when I, you know, wolf whistled at a woman. I said, no, it wasn't. It wasn't okay, but society told you it was, or women didn't complain about it because they didn't think there was any point in doing it. So this is one of those things that it may be, like I said, accepted, because we did accept it, but was it ever acceptable? And some of the things that Nigel Farage is being accused of, is the answer to that is no.
That's right. But then even if you look at 70s and 80s television shows and sitcoms, some of the jokes that were played to canned laughter or audience laughter at the time, seen as funny, are not funny now, and some of those shows are no longer aired because they are seen as offensive in today's context, although they wouldn't have been seen as offensive in the context in which they were made.
I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? It's all about the context, and certainly when we were younger, the playground was just banter. Or Mickey taking, or bullying. You know, we went into those degrees, and you know, everybody got it.
Exactly, and sometimes you were lucky if you got bantered, because better that than being bashed over the head with a cricket bat, which was, you know, the other alternative.
It was the other alternative. Yeah. So anyway, that's what we're going to be talking about at midnight. It is quite nuanced, I think, these questions. It's not as simple as, oh, Nigel wrong, everybody else right, because there is that time frame, there is that, all of those things. So let's talk about it. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Should we take a quick break and then we'll come back and look at the papers? Vincent and I'll be here in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you, and with me is Vincent Moss, former political editor. Let's have a look at the Sun newspaper. Of course, this is the front page for Budget Day. So Rachel Reeves's budget ledger. Taxes on work, pensions, houses, taxes, milkshakes, hotel stays and having fun all up. Tax on fuel, at least that's frozen. Well, we don't know if it's frozen.
We don't know for sure, but I think the Sun prides itself on being the sort of the champion of, as it see it, white van man,
yeah.
And always campaigns on freezing fuel duty, which it has been for many years. And I think the Chancellor's probably decided that it is not worth garnering the ire of the Sun and van drivers everywhere. So it looks as though fuel duty, or certainly the Sun is predicting, will be frozen. So that's a positive as the Sun sees it, although taxes, as it says, potentially going up on everything else.
Yeah, I mean, taxi drivers who normally get VAT on, I think, on the profit, they'll be getting VATted on their fare. I think that's what I was reading.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of little taxes, aren't there?
Yeah, what's been called a smorgasbord, but I always thought a smorgasbord was a nice thing.
So I always thought it was a nice thing.
they need a better word than smorgasbord, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. I know what I was going to say, but I can't say it.
Yeah, right. I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. The Times newspaper, trial by jury only for the most serious crimes in Lammy's reform. This has never gone well for any society to remove the right to trial by jury. It has never boded well in any society when judgment comes from just one person, even as independent as that judge may be. They may be racist, they may be misogynistic, they may be, whatever it is, and that one person is making that decision. You could go to jail for up to 5 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. As you say, it sort of smacks of dictator regimes, doesn't it?
Yeah, Russia, for example.
But the government hasn't got a clue what to do about this backlog. I mean, at the moment, if you're being listed for trial, you could be looking at 2029, 2030, and people deserve justice quicker. They want to see offenders put away if they've committed serious crimes. You can't have, in my view, 4 or 5 years wait before you go to trial. Clogs up the prisons, which are already at breaking point. But this doesn't seem to be a sensible alternative. And I think there was a leak, and the government hasn't officially commented on it, but the Times is running it in Wednesday's paper, saying that pretty much unless it's rape or murder or something of that nature, rape, murder and manslaughter are the only ones that will go to a jury trial. The rest will be decided by a judge, and whatever their innate bias might be, he or she...
And we see it every blooming week with judgments that are brought down by these old codgers that should be really put out to grass, in my view, and they've got no idea about the world they live in. They walk around in ermine or whatever it is judges wear, and they've got no clue about the real world. And of course, I wouldn't trust them.
No, I would imagine the government will either walk away from this to some extent, but it has talked in the past. There was a review in this, I think it was the Leveson review, a former appeal court judge who was asked to look at ways of reducing this backlog. I think it's about 80,000 cases or something in Crown courts. There's huge backlog, and there is some suggestion of creating an intermediate court, something between a magistrate's court and a Crown court, where they could deal with some cases. Now, people might accept that it's some low-level cases, but even then, people have always had a right to be tried by jury.
That's always been an inalienable right.
It has.
I mean, this is what annoys me, Vincent, is any time they want to save money, they take our rights away.
Yeah.
That is the go-to thing they do. Right, we need to save money. These people don't need these rights. We'll just take them away. And that is the first thing they think of. The reason there's a backlog is not because of jury trials. That it is not the fault of juries that there is this backlog. The fault of this backlog is underspending in the justice system. So fix it by spending money on it, not taking our rights away.
Reopen some of the many courts that were closed. Make them work longer hours, make them work weekends, make them work evenings.
Exactly.
And just work through the backlog like that now. But of course that requires money, and as we know, one thing the government hasn't got is money.
Well, they have. They just don't want to spend it on protecting our rights.
Yeah.
You know, they'd rather spend it on a busted flush like HS2, which is still gobbling money for no reason.
Absolutely. I suspect that they will end up backing away from this. This is a leaked report saying that this could happen, and it's one thing that sort of David Lammy, the Justice Secretary, is looking at. I suspect there'll be such an outcry about this.
It would be disgusting
that
if
they'll back away from
I mean,
it.
this is the work of dictatorships that take away jury trials, the right to be judged by your peers. It is absolutely sacred to our justice system, and I don't believe we've got a justice system without a jury.
No. And they've got to find a way of getting rid of the backlog. And this is one way of doing it, but I would have thought it's probably about the worst option.
Yeah.
And I imagine that it probably won't happen. But also what won't happen is creating Nightingale courts, creating loads of courts, loads of extra capacity, and to rattle through the cases. And that won't happen, sadly.
I know, well, that's exactly what should happen, rather than the first point of call is to take away our rights.
Yeah.
Just go, oh, well, they don't care about us, we'll just take them away, that's fine, and we'll never give them back. So, again, the top story on the Times, really, the central story is Reeves aims at workers, savers and pensioners, and in also it is looking likely to up the welfare budget by 15 billion. That's not going to go down well again, is it? The fact that, you know, the workers are paying more in order that people on benefits can have a pay rise. Absolutely.
I mean, the Times is focusing on what it says the middle classes who it says are going to get hit by about a smorgasbord, there's that word again, of £1,600 on average, and saying the combined tax rises will leave a middle class family with two earners facing a £1,600 hit. And they're thinking in particular of the way that the tax thresholds, which are already frozen by the Conservatives, they'll continue that.
So that's really
longer.
sneaky.
And that effectively is a tax rise.
It's a tax rise, it's a lie. I mean, that's just what annoys me. Just be honest. We said we wouldn't raise your taxes, but we are by freezing those thresholds. Right, Salza. You know, we're in a different world.
Well, it looks as though the Chancellor needs to find, depending on which paper you read, 25 to 30 billion again after the 40 billion she had to find in her first budget. It's a lot of money, and the Times is speculating about some of the things we've heard trailed, such as the mansion tax on homes over £2 million, pay per mile scheme that will target electric vehicles, and a load of other taxes. I mean, this is a story that's been running for days, if not weeks, about all the things that could be tax rises, and finally we'll find out when the Chancellor gets up at about lunchtime, and we'll see who's hit and how hard. I mean, the trouble is with going for the smorgasbord of tax rises is everybody gets annoyed and everybody gets hit, rather than just going for a slightly more honest, which would have been a manifesto breach, 1 or 2p on income tax, which at least would have been straightforward and fair. At least it would have been honest and fair. Yeah, I completely agree with you. The other story here, I don't know if this is just broken, because I certainly didn't know this had happened. Sir Richard Branson has paid tribute to his wife Joan, who has died at the age of 80. She said he'd been by his side for 50 years. She was my best friend, my rock, my guiding light and my world. Yeah, very sad. 50 years a really long time, and in a world where he started out in rock and roll music with Virgin Records. In that sort of world, and in the 60s and 70s, you'd have thought he'd have been through sort of several relationships, partnerships, marriages, but no, they've been together for 50 years, so a real blow, very sad news. Yeah, really sad. I saw this story earlier on. The science has charted the 5 ages of the human brain, and apparently we are in adolescence until we hit our 30s. I know a lot of people who are in adolescence. In their 70s, potentially, so... Not that I'm looking at the room where my team work, children. But, you know, I think that was quite interesting. Will people use that as an excuse never to grow up? Well, exactly. It says they've analysed MRI scans from more than 3,800 people. This is at University of Cambridge. Interestingly, it says 66 is marked by the start of a deterioration in the brain's white matter. At 83, the different brain neighbourhoods become more isolated. There's an increasing reliance on local networks. So, yeah, it's the different ages of the brain, and obviously, but it does seem to sort of say that, obviously, the older you get, worse it gets, which I guess we kind of knew. Great. Something to look forward to, isn't it? Yeah. When does it all go wrong? 66? 66, and then it gets worse at 83 again. Great. Lovely. But yeah, if you're in your
in your late 20s and even your early 30s, you can claim to be an adolescent.
Yeah.
That's great. No, I'm sure there's a lot of parents going, no, please don't tell my son that or my daughter that. They refuse to grow up at the best of times. Right. Oh, do you wear pink?
Sometimes.
Yeah, I like men that wear pink. Yes, real men should wear pink. I think that it's
the times, isn't it?
Very nice colour on men. It's very nice. All right, the Mirror. Autumn budget vow. Help is at hand. Oh yeah, we always consider Rachel Reeves as being helpful. Chancellor tells Mirror there'll be wage rises for millions of low-paid workers, which is helping herself, isn't it? I mean, she's forcing businesses to pay this extra money, which will then lead to presumably them at some point crossing the tax threshold, which means that she'll get more money. This is not about the workers at all.
No, exactly. I mean, the Mirror's highlighting the increases in the minimum wage, which have been confirmed by the government, and in particular, there's a very big rise of 8.5%, I think, for those aged 18 to 20, because one of the things the government wants to do is, while those 18 to 20-year-olds get less money than those who are aged 21, I think they're going to get about £12.70, and those under 18 to 20 or 18 to 20 get less. They want to equalise that. So it is a big uplift, in particular for 18 to 20-year-olds. But I was getting my hair cut the other day, and the guy running the salon said, it's crazy, you know, I'm going to have to pay these teenagers that can barely hold a broom an awful lot of money. It's going to be crippling for them. And there is I mean, obviously we want everybody to get paid well, but when we were all starting out in our working lives, let's be honest, we weren't much use when we were 16, 17, 18, and it is going to hurt businesses again, and after they were hurt in the last budget with the national insurance contributions.
That's exactly my point, is that help is at hand, but she's not actually having to shell out any of this money. She's just saying, right, you've got to pay this, businesses have got to suck it up, and then people have got to pay more tax to her. So, you know, great.
I think she's going to try and make the helping people with the cost of living one of the centrepieces of the budget, and the minimum wage rise is part of that, but is it enough?
But will it be good for growth?
Well, exactly. No.
And that's what we need, is growth. Let's take a break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. It's Petrie here with you, and with me, Vincent Moss, former political editor, and we're looking at the papers. So The Guardian, again, Reeves vows to tackle the cost of living crisis in a decisive budget for Labour. We'll wait and see about that. The other big story is jury trials to be scrapped for all but the most serious of offences. So they're going quite positive on it. This is radical proposals drawn up by David Lammy. And Farage faces fresh racism allegations from former classmates. And that's what you mean by him leaving that door open.
Yeah.
By saying, I can't remember.
Yeah, I think that, and sort of effectively denying the worst allegations, means that, as was always likely, further former classmates have come out. 3 more school contemporaries, reports The Guardian, who claim to have witnessed Nigel Farage's alleged teenage racism, have rejected his suggestion that it was banter, describing it as targeted, persistent and nasty.
Well, maybe he was a nasty kid, but you know, it doesn't mean he's a nasty adult.
No.
Not necessarily, anyway. The picture story they've got on the front there is the White House has hailed tremendous progress in peace talks, and they would. But it does appear that Zelensky has agreed in principle to some of the changes. It's gone from a 28-point plan to a 19-point plan, I believe. But for my money, it was a stitch-up between the US and Russia.
Yeah, it looks like, as you say, the original 29-point plan was effectively a Russian plan, probably effectively exactly what they wanted.
And rewarded the US
yes,
for delivering it with money and cash.
Yeah. And it's now been changed. It's something more palatable to the Ukrainians, but doubtless by that very fact will be very unpalatable to Putin.
Well, they've already said they reject it.
Yeah. So I'm not sure we're any closer. I mean, President Trump was outside the White House Thanksgiving, doing the usual pardoning of a couple of turkeys before the big holiday. But he said he refers to his thing, much denied, that he's already solved 8 wars and this is the 9th one, and he's pretty optimistic he can solve this one soon. Well, let's see. There are even rumours Zelensky might fly to Mar-a-Lago over the Thanksgiving break and speak to Trump about this and potentially agree to parts of it. So it depends who you listen to. I mean, the Americans are certainly very optimistic about it, but Putin being Putin, it's very hard to see him agreeing to this revised plan, so I'm not sure we're any further forward, sadly.
The sticking point will be the sovereignty of the land that's been taken, because Zelensky would give up the land for now, wants to retain global sovereignty of that land. So it would still be Ukrainian land, albeit occupied by Russia, whereas Russia want to declare it as sovereign Russian land, which Zelensky will not. I mean, I don't think he can give that away. He can't give that away.
And he'll want defence guarantees as well, and they'll be very hard to deliver on as well.
Well, unless the US guarantees.
Yeah.
But then it's already said that if he does guarantee, he wants to be financially compensated for that.
Exactly.
Trump saying that he wants to be financially compensated for that, and forgetting, of course, that the promise that America made to Ukraine when it got rid of his nuclear weapons. They said, get rid of the nuclear weapons and we guarantee you protection from Russia. We guarantee it. Completely reneged on that.
Yes.
But anyway, a rather disturbing picture there, because Moscow continues raiding cities, including Kyiv. So there you go. The Daily Mail, again, going on the budget we've all been dreading. She talks of a drive for growth, but bosses say an 8.5% minimum wage hike for 18 to 20-year-olds is absolutely bonkers. It's going to be a popular move by the Chancellor, but will it stop hiring?
Well, this is the thing. It's all very well if you're an 18 to 20-year-old and you're getting a big wage hike of 8.5%, taking the minimum wage up to £10.85 an hour. But if it stops people hiring at a time when we've got nearly 1 million 18 to 24-year-olds, 25-year-olds not in employment, training or education, if it stops them getting a rung on the ladder and getting an entry-level job, that's counterproductive. And at a time when AI is already potentially taking a lot of entry-level jobs, need young people to get into employment and get a foot on the ladder. And one of the advantages, and I was never a fan of it at the time, of paying people lower rates when they were younger, was it did make them more attractive to employers when they might not have many skills or any, know how to work properly and know the discipline of work. Now, if it stops hiring and it adds to a kind of hiring freeze, then it's a counterproductive move, isn't it? So we'll see.
Completely counterproductive. And actually, moves like this and the increase in national insurance that she forced onto businesses in the last budget speed up the process of companies using AI.
Yeah.
So it feeds that beast, because companies are saying, well, look, if I've got a robot or the equivalent chatbot or whatever that can do the work of a human being, I don't have to pay it national insurance, I don't have to pay it wages, I don't have to, factor in holidays or sick pay. It's cheaper, it's better, it's more efficient, and that is speeding up the use of AI. In fact, so many companies are saying that they'll be, even next year, they'll be replacing thousands of jobs with AI.
It's happening really quickly,
1 in 6,
and
I think it was.
the more that employment costs and the cost of
Yeah.
hiring people goes up, as you say, the quicker it's going to accelerate that process.
Absolutely, and why wouldn't it if you're a business that needs to make some kind of profit? Right, let's have a look at the I newspaper. A lot of these papers, of course, are just talking about the budget. I mean, I tell you what this budget has done in the last week or so, that it has completely created a vacuum of any other news.
Yes.
It's been incredibly difficult trying to put a programme together when it's all about the budget. And go, I don't want to talk about that anymore. But the Eye has gone with it. A moment of truth for Reeves and the UK economy. The 2-child benefit cap is expected to be scrapped in full. 8.5% pay rise, which we said for 18 to 20-year-olds. Chancellor faces a defining moment caught between the surge of reform on the right and demands from Labour MPs on the left. And food prices are likely to grow after the budget, despite a drive to help on the cost of living. And again, these are the consequences of putting wages up, because these big supermarket chains, they're not going to lose out on profit, right? They are not going to do that. So if they're forced to pay the young workers more, what happens? They put that on the price of food, so it costs us more. So Rachel Reeves seems to be very one-dimensional. I don't, I've always been taught to look at make a decision, but work out the consequences of that decision in lots of different directions before you solidify that decision, right? That's how I go through my life, right? Make a decision, then go, right, what could go wrong? What's plan B? What are the unintended consequences of this decision? But she doesn't seem to be capable of that.
No, because she's desperate for growth, and yet and desperate to get inflation under control, and yet inflation in the Eurozone is about 2.1%. It's stubbornly high here at 3.6%.
Yeah.
Food inflation is higher than that, and as a result of some of these budget measures, is predicted to go even higher. So that really means it's hard to get inflation under control and down to the 2% target, and it makes it really hard for the Bank of England to cut interest rates. There's another meeting in the Bank of England on December the 18th. People will be hoping for a pre-Christmas rate cut. Well, certainly if they're mortgage holders, not so happy if they're savers, of course. And that's going to be really tricky, because this budget will be a big factor in the next Bank of England interest rate setting meeting. And if it looks like it's not getting inflation under control, then the chances of a rate cut are
I don't see how it can get inflation under control. I mean, part of the inflationary pressure that we've seen were those hikes on businesses from the last budget, and we've seen that there's been a drop in hiring, we've seen a drop in decent jobs, we've seen, all sorts of repercussions from that NI hike, which is costing businesses a fortune. People are not getting pay rises because of that NI hike. Nobody in this building I know of, they would, well, that any money we were thinking of giving you a pay, that's gone to the Chancellor, so nobody's getting a pay rise. So and yet, like I said, there are companies that refuse to not make more and more profit every single quarter. So what do? They charge it back to us.
Exactly, the costs are just passed on.
Costs are passed on.
So it's the same with very good move in many ways by Wes Streeting to talk about the sugar tax and cutting obesity and making food healthier. But that's a cost that will just be passed on in higher prices to the consumer.
Yeah, of course it will. And also, I think it's really disingenuous. I don't think that is what they're planning to do. If they wanted to address obesity and take care of public health in terms of what we're eating and drinking, they would be sanctioning the manufacturers of that food. They would be talking to them. I mean, I don't know if you saw the Ratner moment of one of the bosses at Campbell's Soup. Right, the Campbell's food, I don't think they just make soup. But he said, oh, I wouldn't drink that rubbish, that's for poor people. It's full of printed meat. It's not even real meat. I mean, that's what you do. I mean, it's an American company, and no to American food, thank you. No offence, but if you were hell bent on helping people, this is about raising money. It's not about keeping people healthy. It's not about a sugar tax. If they wanted that, they go to the manufacturers and they say, just don't manufacture anything with these ingredients in, for public health. So this is what I mean. It's all so sneaky and sort of not real.
Oh, just lots and lots
it's
of
for your
different
own
taxes.
good. It's for your own good. Is it? Really? It's like they're putting up wine by 15p a bottle. Oh, it's for your own good. I don't think that's why you're doing it.
No.
I think you're
That's
doing
another
it because
tax,
you want
isn't it?
more
I'm
tax.
sure all the alcohol taxes will go up.
Oh, they'll all go up. And of course, the cigarettes and smoking taxes and vaping taxes and things like that will go up. And of course, the electric vehicles, which people were told, get this is great. And they're going to have to pay 3p a mile.
Well, that's a real shock because the government was encouraging people to move off diesel and petrol into electric vehicles, and now they're talking about a pay per mile charge, which could really hit people, especially obviously those who drive long distances.
Yeah, but they've also said, and I read this earlier on and I was like, that doesn't make any sense at all to me, is that electric car drivers will have to estimate how much they're going to be driving for the year, and they will pay according to that estimation. They won't have black boxes in their cars just yet. Because basically the tax has come before the technology, although the technology is out there, but we're all resistant to having black boxes in our cars, and for very, very, very sound reasons. So the tax will come before the technology is actually implemented. So people are just going to have to, I'm only doing 2 miles.
Sounds like a nightmare. What a bureaucratic
how
nightmare.
Are you going to? Exactly. How are you actually going to measure that? How are you going to do that? I mean, it's easy, I suppose. I don't drive my car very much, so my car insurance is set to a couple of thousand miles a year or something, and that's easy to check because every time I go for my MOT or whatever it is, I suppose the insurance company could ask for that information, and I guess they could do that with EVs, but. Who's going to do that? Because they're just going to guess. The government isn't going to say, well, I want to see your MOT. I want to see how many miles you've done since the last one.
No, and you're going to guess, and then you're going to have to apply for a rebate or pay more. It just sounds a really complicated way of doing things.
Yeah, it's an absolute mess. And also, why should you? I mean, the whole point of going to EVs, and I know they're losing lots of money from it, but was for the environment. And now they're saying, but we don't care about the environment, we just want the money.
Exactly.
And the mayor is doing the same with London.
Yep, because it used to be that EVs were exempt from congestion charges, and they're now not going to be.
They're now not going to be, because they get addicted to this money, and they want more and more and more of it. And tourists aren't going to get away scot-free either, because London wants to charge and I think the Chancellor's allowing people to charge a fee for staying in our country overnight. It's like it's all of it is just taking money from people.
Yeah.
It's just disgusting. Just leave us alone. Quick break, and Vincent and I'll be back in just a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you. Don't forget, it's your chance to talk back coming up at midnight. So we're talking about Nigel Farage and his claim that what he may or may not have said as a teenager was simply banter. So we'll be discussing that at midnight. Vincent Moss is with me at the moment, former political editor, The Daily Express, now Calamity Lammy, I like that name, wants to axe jury trials. So there's a lot of people going big on that. It's interesting, so I discussed this with Gabriella, my producer, and I just thought, well, it's only a leak. It's not really been confirmed yet. I think once it goes in front of the House and once people start making decisions and it goes to then we'll do it. Because I did the Leveson report when that came out about the change in jury trials, and now all the papers are running with it. But I think that's because there's a vacuum of any other news, because this isn't certain.
No, it's not, and I think it's a decision some papers have made to lead on this story because they want to get away from the budget. They probably think there's been a lot of it around.
That's what
there's
I
going to
think.
be even more of it after the Chancellor delivers the budget. So they're doing something different, and the Telegraph is saying that this abolishing jury trials would destroy the justice system and increase the chances of wrongful convictions, which is interesting because it's suggesting that judges are more likely to get it wrong than juries. I'm not sure that's true.
Well, in some cases, I mean, look, I don't mind if it's a really complicated financial case that there isn't a jury there, because I think that I couldn't figure out, I can't do maths, I wouldn't be able to, I would be useless. But you know, and you could have a load of forensic accountants and a judge and you know, a couple of judges maybe looking at that. That's fine. But I wouldn't trust a single judge on his own or her own.
That's true,
to make the right decision.
But that's a very good point about particularly complex fraud trials, because there's an allegation really that a lot of those criminals get off because the juries find it too difficult to understand complex fraud cases.
And you could have forensic accountants working, you know, in the justice system who they probably already are, but, you know, and they could make the decision on the basis of what they know about accountancy. So that I don't mind. But I think that your right to a jury trial should not be removed.
Exactly, and I think it's. I think one of the papers was describing it as the sort of the biggest shake-up in 800 years in terms of the British justice system. So it looks as though I think the Express is saying that a staggering 3 in 4 cases could now be decided by a judge. I mean, it would get through the backlog, but I think most people see it exactly as too high a price to pay, effectively abolishing the British legal system as we know it.
Yeah.
So I would imagine it's unlikely to go ahead in the form it's been leaked. And again,
I can't see the Lords going for it.
No, and people leak things for a certain reason, and I suspect that people behind this leak may have leaked it in this deliberate way, because if it's a partial leak like this, it creates such an uproar that it makes it really hard, even if the government did want to do it, to go ahead with it now, I think.
I agree, and also they're just trying to distract from this budget and how awful it's going to be. The Telegraph, jury trial scrap for most crimes, covers that. Dirty dozen tax rises to hit the middle class families. This story is quite interesting. I wish I could read it because it's a bit blurry, but Britain, the Telegraph is always blurry. Britain ready to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. Peace deal. So we would have to do that as a sovereign nation as opposed to being part of NATO, because I think one of the things that Putin won't budge on is having NATO troops on Ukrainian soil.
Exactly.
So we'd have to go it alone.
Well, or maybe with the French, because there's speculation that potentially...
Does that not start to look like a NATO force?
Well, that's the trouble. But I think it will be alarming to many people if that happens, because the thought of our tolerance for British troops getting killed in any conflict now is extremely low. Many would say rightly so. So I think that the threat of putting British troops in danger on the ground would be something that many people would oppose. But and it's also, I think it's a bit premature, because we look as though we're a long way from any kind of peace deal. To start talking about boots on the ground or potential reconstruction of Ukraine using frozen Russian assets.
I mean, this is what the United Nations forces were designed to do. to hold a line, like they did in Cyprus, right? You have blue berets on the ground. That's what. I know there's a certain strict criteria to having UN forces in a peacekeeping forces, but that's what they were designed for. So I don't know why we're talking about going it alone. This nib here at the bottom, the news in brief: Macron revamps army with national service. This is interesting because there's a number of European countries now that are looking at national service in order to bolster their army numbers, and there'll be a lot of British people who would be very concerned if we turned our attention to bolstering the military with national service.
Yeah, I think it's something France is looking at, and I think it's now about 10 European countries that have got some form of national service, and it's would prove very controversial in France, and it was something I think that got floated in the past under the Conservative government by various politicians, and never government policy as such. But there is a move towards that. We're ratcheting up defence spending. Everybody's worried about the potential threat of Russia or potentially even China at some point. So Homeland Security is a big thing, but a very bold move, and I think it's a courageous politician that would advocate national service either in France or in England.
Well, particularly in France, actually,
Yes.
I think, and particularly Macron, who's not exactly popular.
No.
And can't keep a prime minister for more than a day or two.
That's true.
Yeah, he's not exactly the most popular man that ever ruled over France. I can't imagine the French will take to that.
I'm sure they won't. I'm sure that they'll be out on the streets.
Vocally.
They don't need much of an excuse.
They don't. They're really good at it. I really have to admire the French for their non. They're not putting up with any old stuff, are they? The Daily Star, Reeves shakedown. I'm the milkshake snatcher. That's after the Margaret Thatcher, who was the
Milk snatcher.
Milk
yeah,
snatcher.
You've got to be of a certain vintage, haven't you, to remember that?
Yeah, Margaret
that
Thatcher,
nickname
the milk snatcher.
Exactly, and the Daily Star have referencing their slightly older cohorts of readers back to that famous phrase. A nice picture of Rachel Reeves there, mocked up holding a milkshake, saying Reeves shakedown.
Yeah. I tell you what, I wasn't the least bit bothered when they took milk. It was disgusting at school.
Yeah, I don't...
Oh, those little bottles of warm milk where the birds had eaten through, remember the metal discs that are on top, and they used to knock through, and the cream was always...
Just as bad as school dinners, they were pretty horrible as well.
God, the only thing I liked in school dinners was they did a chocolate sponge with a mint gravy. Can you believe that?
Sounds good.
But it was nuclear green. It looked like it would be in a movie of some description. It really looked...
Sounds bizarre.
Yeah,
The only thing I remember was chips. That's all people ever wanted was chips. Nothing else, really.
Mint custard, not gravy, mint custard. Skint is coming. That's a really good headline. That's from the Metro. So looking at booze, nights away, and even your latte coffee to go up with millions paying more. No. And the Independent, US and Ukraine agree essence of a new peace deal. Do you think that Trump is overplaying it?
Yeah, I think so, because it's pretty meaningless, because it's all very well Zelensky, it says in the Independent, ready to move forward with the European plan, and Trump claims agreement is getting very close. Well, by definition, anything that appeals to the Ukrainians is not going to appeal to Putin. Anything that appeals to Putin is not going to appeal to the Ukrainians. So very hard to see it moving forward. But Trump was very upbeat outside the White House, saying we're going to get there. I think we're getting very close to a deal. I think we're making progress. Well, let's see, but I suspect not.
Saying that Moscow shows no sign of willingness to end the war as they continue to bomb various parts of Ukraine. In fact, Ukraine seemed to be doing reasonably well in attacking structures in Russia as well at the moment. And the FT, there we go. That's obviously with the budget in mind. We're looking at Made in China, cost savings, electrify VW. Reeves prepares tax-heavy budget in a bid to show she has control of finances. What do you make of Reeves saying, I think it was yesterday, she said, I'm going to prove you all wrong. I'm still going to be here. I'm going to prove the Tories wrong. I'm going to prove the media wrong, and I'm going to still be here next year, and I'm going to be here the year after that. What do you?
She's got to say that, but I think her and Keir Starmer's fate are inextricably linked. The view of many Labour MPs is a question of when, not if, both will be departing, and half of them seem to think it will be after the disastrous likely set of May elections. Some think it could be before that. I personally think there won't be any change until after the May elections. Maybe
I wouldn't
not
be
till
surprised
after that.
if she went, because he will use her as a lightning rod, won't he? He'll say, well, I didn't want that budget, that was all Rachel.
True, but then it gets closer to him, doesn't it? She's a
Yeah,
reasonably
true.
effective firewall.
Oh, I don't know. Well, I think only time will tell, but we will be over and through the budget this time tomorrow.
What a relief.
Goodness, what a relief. Vincent, thank you very much indeed for coming in. Vincent Moss there, former political editor. Right, stay where you are to talk back next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. This is Talkback, and this is Petrie, and I'm with you for the next hour. And this is a full hour of you and me chatting. So what are we talking about this morning? I want to talk to you about banter. I want to talk to you about Nigel Farage and these claims that he was racist. He said some really nasty things when he was a boy, when he was at school, when he was at Dulwich College. If you don't know Dulwich College, it's a very posh boys' school, you know, teachers were writing letters about him. Look, he says he didn't do anything intentionally. I think that's the basic crux of it. But let's listen to him himself say this. So this is the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, quizzed by ITV on Monday over his views on the blurred lines between banter and what could be seen as abuse.
At school, categorically on the record, you did not racially abuse fellow pupils.
I would never, ever do it in a hurtful or insulting way.
That's not quite the same as not doing it.
It's 49 years ago. It's 49 years ago.
What difference is the time?
Isn't it? Well, you know, I just entered my teens. Can I remember everything that happened at school? No, I can't. Have I ever been part of an extremist organisation or engaged in direct, unpleasant personal abuse, genuine abuse, on that basis? No.
You're not quite... That's very, very caveated. You're not quite ruling this out. The question is, did you ever racially abuse fellow pupils in school?
No.
You've caveated it with a hurtful way.
Not with intent.
What do you mean not with intent? I don't understand what you mean by not with intent. What does that mean?
You wouldn't do.
But what does that mean?
No.
No what?
No. I have never directly really tried to go and hurt. Have I said things 50 years ago that you could interpret as being banter in a playground, that you could interpret in the modern light of day in some sort of way? Yes.
So there you go. That's him. I mean, you've got to say that he did look awkward about that. And if he did say inappropriate things in the playground, then he's not alone, right? Because that was then and this is now, and many people are saying, look, if you did do it, just own it and say, look, I was a scrote. You know, what can I say? I was showing off to my mates. I probably was a bit of a, you know, head, and I quite possibly did. But I don't believe that now. I didn't really believe it then. It was just banter. Do you see what I mean? Because I know that you know, I'm not far off Nigel Farage's age. I know I was in a not in a posh school, but I was in a playground at about the same time. So, and the banter was relentless. I mean, it was all the time. Most of it said in good spirit. Most of it was teasing. Some of it crossed the line to bullying. And I remember at my school there were two black children. They were twins called Ivy and Joanne. And it's Ivy and Joanne, I can even remember their surname. I won't use it in case they're listening, but hello, girls. So we all knew who they were, but there wasn't racial abuse at my school because we literally had two black pupils, so that wasn't part of the language. But if you were ginger or short or fat or I don't know what, then you were fair game, or you had glasses or whatever. I was too boring. They left me alone until I was a bit older. But does it matter? I think that's the question. Does it matter even if? I mean, and more, because he's denied it, more and more people are coming out from his school days and saying, no, he did say this and he did say that. You know, does it matter if he did then? Like I said, a lot of that language was accepted in those days. It was never acceptable, but it happened. And certainly it wouldn't be accepted nowadays. I can't imagine what playgrounds are like now. There can't be any banter or teasing or anything. I mean, from what we're being told, he said, that crosses a line, right? It does cross a line. That's not just banter, right? But do you think that this matters at all? I mean, people are capable of change, right? There are probably a lot of people who were absolute. I wish I could use the language that I want to use, but I can't. I get into trouble. We're not very nice children in playgrounds, and they're not like that now. They're not nasty, racist now, or maybe they are. I mean, can you change from a teenager to an adult? I happen to think you can, and I think society puts different pressures on you that the things you might have said as a teenager you would never dream of saying now. You wouldn't even you'd be disgusted with yourself if you said it now. Or is it the case that you are pretty much set as a teenager, and that will set you up for what you're going to be like as an adult? I don't know. You tell me. That's why I'm asking all these questions. I don't know. I mean, I think it does speak to, if they've got to go back that far to find this kind of comment allegedly from Nigel Farage, then that speaks to perhaps that he's not been saying that as an adult, right? Otherwise, they would be pointing to stuff that was more recent to prove this point that they're trying to make. I don't happen to believe that Nigel Farage is a racist. I don't know if he was, but I don't believe I think he's many things, but I don't believe, I've never heard him actually emphatically say out and out racist stuff. So that's where I stand on this, in case you're wondering. I mean, there's lots about Nigel Farage that I don't support and I don't like and wouldn't vote for, but I want to know what you think. 0344 499 1000. Is it possible to have banter these days? Is it possible to even do that? What do young people do? Can they tease each other? Is it possible to do it the way that we perhaps did when we were kids? Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a shame. I mean, not racism. I think that's horrible, right? I'm completely anti that. But some kinds of banter are, I think, kind of important. It's kind of part of being British. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Let's go straight to the calls now. And Peter is in Ashford. A new caller. Hello, Peter.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for calling in. What did you want to say? But do you believe that this is nothing, or do you think it's important?
I believe it's nothing. It's a made-up story. It's just another trying to get at Nigel Farage. Whatever else you might think of him, I don't believe he's a racist. His comments 49 years ago, if he hasn't changed since then, I think there's something wrong. People who he was, whatever he was, 15 or 12, something like that.
Yeah, it was in that rate. I mean, if he was going to be a prefect, he was probably 15, 16, something like that, I would have thought.
Okay, if he was a prefect when these comments were made, then yes, he'd be 16, 17.
Yeah.
But even so, the Labour government are trying to give this idea that 16 and 17-year-olds are adults and old enough to vote, whereas any psychologist would say that, well, nobody's properly developed until they're in their mid-20s.
Yeah, well, they're actually saying 30s now. For your brain, your adolescent brain, until you're 30-odd. Yeah, it's an interesting one, though, isn't it? Because, look, if he did say these things, they're pretty nasty, right? They're not acceptable. But like you said, kids of that age are just not very nice anyway.
No, the thing is that a banter, as it's called, certainly in Britain as the Australians have more or less copied us, in a sense, of that if you're saying nasty words, it's usually because you're pals, and if they're being tight-lipped and calling you something friendly, you've better watch out.
I totally agree with that, by the way. The love language with my friends is quite banterous, right? Because we trust each other, we love each other, we like each other, and we can make each other laugh. So, but we would never be hurtful. You know, there is. We know our lines, right? We know where that line could be crossed.
Yeah, there was a lot of teasing, which obviously, if somebody is particularly sensitive, they might take it to heart. But mostly, the teasing could be quite nasty. But there was no malice in it.
I think that's what Farage is trying to say, isn't it? Yeah, Farage is trying to say that. Look, yeah, I might have said some bad things, but I never, though, you know, I didn't mean it directly to hurt somebody. No, but I mean, the reason that I think this is kind of a not a non-story, because I think it's interesting, but I do think that if there were more up-to-date, if there was more up-to-date proof of Farage saying similar things that he may or may not have said as a 14, 15, 16-year-old, then they would all be up front and centre, and that wouldn't be acceptable, right?
No, I would agree with you. And the difference is that now we're encouraged to wear our hearts on our sleeves, and that the slightest comment that isn't saying you're a wonderful person is taken as hate speech.
I think most of us know where that line is, right?
Yes, I would agree with you, but the reporter who was pushing him was obviously trying to tempt him to say something.
Oh, I thought that reporter did a superb job. I genuinely do. I think that's the kind of questioning we need of all politicians. I don't care that it was Farage, and I don't care what the subject matter was. What I appreciated about that was that interviewer was not going to let him just get away with saying, "Oh, I didn't mean to," or something. And I think that's a good interview.
I think I get that, but I think there's also a lot of anti-Farage or anti-anybody who's not a lefty or communist.
Most
bias
people aren't
to try
lefty.
to make them say something that they didn't mean to say.
No, I'm going to disagree with you there, because I don't think it's a lefty thing. I think that politicians of all persuasions have been allowed to just lie to us. They've been allowed to say whatever they like.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
By weak interviewers who are too scared to push forward with a line of questioning. So I appreciate seeing anybody do that to any politician of any persuasion.
No, I get that.
Yeah, because I'm sick and tired of the just blah, 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 which is all we get all the time, when they don't answer a single blooming question. That's why I don't interview them anymore, because it's absolutely pointless. And that's of any persuasion. I don't care who they are. They're just all nonsense. But so you think that this is people just stirring up trouble? Do you think that he probably was a bit of a scrote as a kid? I do.
I think he might well have been.
I think he was probably really cocky and showing off.
I wouldn't be surprised at all, but to say that, to expect him not to have changed in that time, not to say that he was racist then and he's not racist now, but simply that the times were different, and you could be teasing and nasty to people without them running off to mummy, if you like.
Well, except that there are those boys now men saying that it affected them really deeply at the time.
Oh, I don't dispute that.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate that. But at the time, certainly it wasn't thought of. And as a 14-year-old or 15-year-old, you couldn't be expected to know that.
Were you a bit of a scrope when you were a boy?
Probably.
It's just showing off to your mates, isn't it?
I was on the receiving end of it to some extent.
Really?
Not to any great extent. I mean, my brother and I would tease each other. And at school, I don't know.
I mean, it wasn't an easy environment, school, was it?
No. No, and it was. I went to a grammar school, which would probably now be considered a posh school.
It would be. I went to a comp.
Well, they were more and more of them vowed, because I'm older than you, and they used to be secondary moderns, of course, and all sorts of things, and things were different then.
They were. I mean, look, it is, and I think it is always very difficult to apply, particularly social norms from 50 years ago to what is socially accepted. I'll use that word as opposed to acceptable now. I think that is a really tricky place to be, to try and say, oh, they're identical, you know, because they're not. They're completely not.
No, they're not. And I think that's, I think there is certainly there is a certain amount of how can we get at Farage, because certainly the Labour government are concerned that he's stealing their thunder.
Well, I think any politician that raises their head above the parapet, I mean, you know, people are not very kind to Keir Starmer, and neither should they be, but, you know, people are not very kind to Rachel Reeves. So I don't think it's just picking on Farage, but I do think that there is picking on Farage, because I think there is on all of them.
I think the other thing, of course, with politicians is they have put their head above the parapet.
Yeah.
And they can't expect not to get attacked.
Well, they can't expect the skeletons to stay quiet forever.
No.
And I think that a lot of them believe that they will. But if you've ever done anything in your past, if you become a public figure, it comes out. It's there.
Yes.
You can't hide from it.
And so, the trouble with that, I think that the unfair part of that is, as this discussion is about, is, well, you know, when he was 15, he was not a very nice person. Well, that doesn't mean to say in the last 50 years he hasn't changed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's a really fair comment. And I think that it is, you know, everybody's trying to correlate the two things together. But if they had more up-to-date proof of Farage saying anything remotely similar, that would be on the front pages as well.
Oh, that's a very different matter. Yes, I would agree.
Yeah, that would be out there. So they obviously haven't found anything where he's been overtly, you know, racist or anti-Semitic in recent times, and that would be very hard to cover up. That would be very hard to hide.
Indeed.
So we've all changed then, Peter. That's good to know. But I'm glad that you called in. Do call again, won't you?
Thank you. Yes.
Good.
I often listen to your programme.
Oh, well, I'm glad.
All the time.
Not all the time. Well, you should be, because it's a good programme. And you can call back any time you like. I've got to take a quick break, but I will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is...
Hello there, and a very good morning to you. It is Wednesday, the 26th Christmas will be over in a month. Yay. Anyway, it's Wednesday the 26th of November, and it is the day of the budget. And we will be covering that in full. I suspect the whole station will be. But I've got a special phone-in for you tomorrow at midnight. So I've got Adam French here. Now, he's been on the programme a few times. He's absolutely brilliant. And he'll be here to answer any of your questions. So if you've got any questions about, I don't know, what's going to happen to your wages or what's going to happen to the tax brackets or any of those things, he will be here from midnight to take your questions and give you some answers. So a slightly different phone-in tomorrow for the budget. Tonight. Yeah, tomorrow for the... Oh, God, I get confused with this midnight stuff. But the talkback, it will be a chance for you to speak to somebody who is just brilliant with the economy and mortgages and house prices and all of ISAs and all that stuff that I don't know anything about. So that's why I've got an expert in for you. So please do give us a call this time tomorrow and talk to Adam and ask him anything that you want to about the budget and what's going to happen. What's going to happen next? So that's all happening with the budget day. At the moment, we're talking about Nigel Farage, and I suppose the question is, does it matter? I think that's the question that I've said. Does it matter that he may have said these things as a teenager, as a young teenager? You know, is it possible that he did say that then but doesn't believe it now? That he, you know, that he was just showing off to his mates? That kind of language was accepted, that kind of behaviour was more accepted than it is today. Like I said, I'm not saying acceptable because it would never be acceptable, but it was more accepted, wasn't it? And what kids say to each other on a playground, particularly back in the sort of late 70s, early 80s, was pretty nasty. It wasn't a gentle time to be a kid, let's put it that way. And people probably said and did a lot of things that they don't agree with today. But I'm just interested whether you think it matters that this has been potentially exposed about Nigel Farage, and he hasn't exactly denied it. He's basically said, I didn't say it to be nasty. It was banter. And so when does banter become abuse? When is it okay to banter with people? I happen to think that bantering is incredibly important, and it is part of our DNA as Brits, I think, taking the mick out of each other. Racism isn't and shouldn't be. That's not acceptable. But you know, just taking the mick out of somebody for wearing glasses or whatever, I don't know. It never really happened to me. So I can't really say. But if it did happen to you, if you were the victim of the so-called banter, how did it make you feel? And how does it make you feel today? And if you were the perpetrator of it, I'd love to hear from you as well. And just saying, well, look, it was perhaps not harmless, because people are affected. But you know, you felt that it wasn't with malice, maybe. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and then your message to 87222. Sheldon. Goodness me, Sheldon, how are you? I haven't spoken to you for ages.
Sorry, darling, I haven't been able to. Faye's been very unwell. She had cancer. And
no, that's bad news. Yeah. Is she all right? Is she okay now? She's...
No, she's not very good, to be honest with you, but we don't want to go into that on the air because it's too depressing for your listeners.
Well, will you send her my love and a big hug and a kiss?
I will indeed, darling.
Good.
Right? So I'm looking after her, but she's not at the best at all.
Oh, bless her.
She had oral cancer, which is very difficult because she can't swallow, can't eat, and losing weight, and goodness knows what. But anyway, let's cut to the chase, right? And she will be, when she's better, she'll be more than pleased to say hello to you. I know she would, okay?
Oh, well, do you make sure you send her my love?
I will. She loves you very much. Anyway, regarding the banter issue with Mr. Farage, I spent years in a particular pub with a very intelligent landlord. Thankfully, he was an intelligent landlord, and it was a very eclectic pub. you'd be rubbing shoulders with a millionaire or a bin man or all sorts of different types of people. And the banter was absolutely rife in there. It was brilliant. In fact, it was the whole thing about the pub. But, however, one day a certain chap came into the pub and he used some adjectives and nouns which everybody just were appalled by. And the landlord just turned around to him and said, "I'm sorry, you are now banned. Could you leave you a pint at the bar, please? Because you are not poisoning this venue. This is my pub and my customers, and you can get out now." It was beyond what I would discuss as banter. And it was racialist, and it was abusive. And it was old-fashioned, and it went back to Nigel's time, 49 years ago, when I used to use and heard these things myself before I grew up. And I do understand that it's a long, long time ago from Mr. Farage's point of view. However, I've got a different opinion regarding Mr. Farage. I don't think leopards change their stripes or spots.
Spots. Yeah, I mean that is the interesting point, isn't it? That is this who he is, or is this who he was, or is this not who he was or is?
Well, if it's endemic to him, then we have a problem.
Yeah.
If he has learned not to present himself as something that is endemic to him, then we have a bigger problem, because he's then a liar.
Yeah.
And dangerous.
I completely agree with that, but I can't find any proof, either written down or verbal, and it would be there with this social media that we've got now and the endless cameras and things, of him saying anything as bad as what he is alleged to have said as a kid, as an adult.
Okay, I understand that, and one of the things I find interesting about it is that, and this is not a political issue, by the way. I am neither a Reform member or against Reform. In the political world, I find it interesting that many MPs, at the end of the day, they are hung by their own petard. And what I'm concerned with is, if there is something in the background of someone which is repetitively going to be brought up, is he ever going to be successful? Is he ever going to get rid of it?
That's a really good question.
Can it be taken out of the media and taken away?
It's difficult now, isn't it? It is difficult now, because this is a shadow, no doubt. But interestingly, I don't know whether it will shift the dial in one way or another. I think if you're a never Farage, you're still going to be a never Farage, right? And if you're a forever Farage, this won't change your mind either. So
no, probably not. No, I understand that completely. The only issue I have with it politically is that we have a habit in this country of taking the great down, as you know. And we have a deliberate habit also of fixation of the editors in the news rooms tend to want to take sensationalism and make an issue of it, so they can carry on with their wonderful opinions, which in popularism terms is quite ironic, because very ironic in popularism terms, because however hard he is trying to get rid of the worst part of the popular right and keeping us on the right side of that, this could become a disaster.
I agree, because it's a real balancing act for Farage. I mean, he's always said, I'm not anti-immigration, I'm not racist, I'm anti-illegal,
Yeah.
I'm anti-illegal migration. But you're right, this will, you know, he doesn't want to be taken over by the far right of reform. He's always trying to distance himself from some of the more radical, racist and outspoken people in reform. And this does colour it. Those people will love this, but the others who want to be seen as a potential government instead of a far right party,
correct,
are not going to like this at all.
No, they aren't going to. So where does that leave him as a leader?
It's an interesting question. It is an interesting question because it may well haunt him, and the last thing he wants right now is for the very far right to support this.
Yeah, correct.
Because that will be a disaster, PR disaster for him. He doesn't want that.
Yeah, and we got enough problems in this country as it is at the moment, without having people discredited and taken down because news editors won't leave them alone.
Well, yeah, and Farage hasn't handled this very well in terms of getting those editors to back off, because if you deny it, then they're just going to find more proof.
Oh, they love all that. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
To back all that up. Really interesting. As ever, Sheldon, I've missed you.
And I'm not accusing him of anything.
No.
It's just an interesting comment, that's all.
It is.
Darling.
I completely agree with you. Listen, go and give Faye a big hug from me.
I will. She's upstairs and I'm going to give her a big kiss and a big hug before she goes to sleep now.
Yeah, and wish her, just say I'm thinking of her. And
when I have more time, I'll come through and again and have another chat about other things.
Lovely. I hope so. But Sheldon, you're never far from my thoughts, so you and Faye, you look after each other, okay?
Love you so much.
Love you too, darling. You take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, Faye. Right. I've got to take a quick break, but I will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning to you. This is Talk and this is Talk Back. So it's your chance to pick up the phone and just have a chat. And we're talking about Nigel Farage and the banter that he was accused. He's been accused of people in the past of it being more than banter, and that it was racist or neo-fascist or fascist. And Farage has said, well, look, I probably did say some ridiculous things that upset some people then. I mean, I can imagine that he was, I don't know, I never met, well, I have met him since he was a child, but I imagine that as a boy he was probably fairly obnoxious. I definitely get that impression of him, and that he was probably a bit of a show-off, and he was probably just being the big I am. What he said, if he did indeed say the things he's being accused of, is pretty vile. and not acceptable at all in any decade. But it was more accepted back in those days. Couple of messages I want to read out. Oliver said, on this Farage abuse banter topic, it was so long ago he was a child. He's grown mentally and physically. If you have to go back this far to find it, then it's scraping the bottom of the barrel to make the point. Equally on this, people like David Lammy and Zach Polanski, etc., have been able to openly use words like fascist multiple times with ill intent and not reprimanded in the same way as using something with banter like intent would be. All the best from Oliver in Pontefract. Jill has said, hang on a second. Good evening. How could anybody possibly believe that what you said or did as a child sticks with you into adulthood? Most children may say and do hateful things. It's all part of growing up. That does not mean that they're hateful when they become adults. If The Guardian can only find something that Nigel said 50 years ago, when he was a child, then it's pretty apparent they cannot find anything else to try to discredit him. And that's from Jill in West Sussex. Ernie says, when I was a child back in the 70s, I had about 10 or so real close friends. My best friend was a Sikh, another was mixed race Chinese, and another was Nigerian. You would not believe the things we used to say to each other, and we laughed like drains. We would never say things like that now. Times have changed so much in the past 50 years. Yet when we meet up occasionally, we will say, boy, we miss those days. Yeah, I mean, I think we did say pretty, but I mean, like I said, my love language with my friends is pretty banterous, let's put it that way, but it's never hurtful, it's never spiteful. So, yeah, I don't know, it's a difficult one. And I don't know whether you can hold grown-up Farage responsible for what he did as a probably, I'm guessing, probably fairly obnoxious 15-year-old would have said or done. I don't know, it's a tricky one, isn't it? John is in West Lothian. Hello, John. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
So, banter or abuse?
Well, it's a very thin line sometimes.
Can be.
I have suffered from both.
Oh, right. Have you ever delivered both?
Well, not that I've been accused of.
Right, okay. That doesn't mean you didn't do it, though.
No, and I'll explain that in a moment.
Okay.
I mean, I lived in England for a while, and some of the comments that was made about Scotsmen was just unbelievable. You know, like, you're just a man in a girl's frock when we wore kilts and things like that. You know, was it abusive? No, it wasn't. It was banter. And I think, I think we've gone too far these days that we're becoming oversensitive to what it is. Yes, there is horrible things that are said, and they must be taken up and dealt with. But something that you said, I mean, that was probably 30 years ago when that was said to me. I'm in my 70s, so I'm an old git. so I can remember going way, way back, and what's acceptable then, both and between friends, between groups that got together and in the pub and had a few beers, and what was actually on TV.
Yeah.
Would not be acceptable today, and I think that's fair enough. Circumstances and society moves on. Can I say that when you said, have you said something? I mean, I go to a club in the village which we've organised since COVID, and we have probably about 50, 60 people there a week. For the mental health and all sorts of things. And yes, there is banter. Yes, I do say things. But I can assure you, they give me as good as anything I give. But the big thing I think about it is knowing your audience, knowing who you're talking to, and having a laugh, and making it relaxed. And and you know, even when I was running a company, you know, in the office that we had, if somebody said something, there was a lot of banter there, which probably other people wouldn't have accepted. But if anybody said anything was out of turn, it was somebody simply said, "Sorry, I don't agree with that," and there was an apology, and it was, you know, that was the end of the matter. Today, people are willing to take it beyond that. But if it's dealt with at the time, then that's fine. But when you go back 50 years or 20 years, 30 years, whatever it is, I find totally unacceptable. Because what they're trying to do is to use today's perception about what is acceptable to what was acceptable then.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with that. I mean, certain things are never acceptable, but they may well have been accepted. You know, they may well have been just like brushed over. But it was, you know, like you said, some of the comedy shows, some of the dramas. I mean, some of the dramas from the 70s, the police dramas, and the way they treat women and things like that. It makes me cringe. But of course, they would never. But that was of its time. I'm not going to complain about it, because that was the way society treated women in the 70s, and that would never be a TV show now, and so things do change. Societies do change. What is acceptable or what's accepted changes. But I fear losing banter completely, because I think it's a really important part of being British, actually.
Absolutely, it is what we're all about.
We're sarcastic, right? We take the mick, and we're sarcastic, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, it is, and it's healthy if it's done in the right way, and it's accepted in the right way, and you know who you're talking to.
Well, it's made me much more robust, because literally nobody can say anything to me, and people can say anything to me, and I'm not offended.
Well, neither am I.
When it comes from the right place.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm just an old git, and that's it. People can talk all about age and all the rest of it. I take it in the spirit in which it is given.
Thank you, and I think that's what's important. Right, it's the spirit in which it is given, and that's what Ricky Gervais says about comedy. You know, it's the intent. It's always the intent. So if the banter or the teasing or the mickey taking or the sarcasm, when you know somebody likes you, then the intention, you know, is not to hurt you. It's when you don't know what the intention is. And I suppose the only question over what Nigel Farage is being accused of is what the intention was.
Yeah, but
when he said it.
Yeah, but with the greatest respect to Petra, none of this has been proved. You know, these are people that are coming out of the woodwork now after many, many years. Now, is it political? Is it because he has suddenly got so high profile? Is it that they're trying to make an issue of something? Now, I'm not saying I don't know the people. I don't know what the thing is. But, you know, it seems to be that if they had so much against what was said, they would have brought it up earlier.
Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, I think it's because there's been a particular reporter who's been digging around in this, which is why it's come to the fore now. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, who knows? You know, when people become. I mean, Farage has been famous. Let's be honest. For years because of Brexit. So they could have brought it up then. I think it's because this reporter's been digging around, and maybe people are getting concerned that he is, you know, politically becoming much stronger, and they're trying to find a stick to beat him with. I don't put that past it either. But you know, he hasn't exactly denied it.
No, but I'm also very suspect about some of this so-called mainstream media, what avenue they're going down and how biased they are. I mean, it's been proved with the BBC.
Yeah, but the newspapers are doing this, and at least with biased newspapers, you know what their bias is, right? With the BBC, it's completely unacceptable because it declares itself to be unbiased, whereas newspapers do declare a bias. They are biased. You know, the Sun newspaper caters to, you know, used to cater to Labour. The Express is very much. You know what I mean? So they've all got they're openly biased, if you like. It's not acceptable for somebody who declares not to be biased to then be biased, because then they're lying. But look, you know, you're fair game, I suppose, if you're a politician trying to become the Prime Minister.
Well, yeah, it's not just you know, major politicians. I think any politician, anybody who stands up for local government or anything else, you know, you put yourself up there. But these people have got to be respected in the sense that they're willing to stand up and be accountable. And yes, if they've got something in their closet, then yes, if it, you know, they should know that before they do that. And if they've done something seriously wrong, and I would suspect that there's many politicians that have got many things in their closet that they don't want to be found out.
Oh, absolutely. I guarantee it. Guarantee it. They're terrified of us finding out most of the stuff. There's super injunctions and all sorts of things floating around at the moment. You'd be amazed. The thing about super injunctions is you're not supposed to know there's a super injunction, but there are.
Well, we need a Scottish First Minister that had a super injunction.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That didn't go well, did it? Did they ever find that money buried in her garden or anything?
Well, I don't know about that, but her husband's never been seen since. So I know.
Have they checked the garden? Listen, it's...
They did find the mobile home and the Jaguar and various...
yeah, that very expensive mobile home that was parked in her drive, yeah. They're all at it. John, it's great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. I've got to go because I've got to take a very quick break, but I will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning to you. This is Talk and it is Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. And we've been talking about Nigel Farage and what he was alleged to have said of his fellow pupils at a very posh and expensive Dulwich College school here in London. And This has been dug around by, I think it was a Channel 4 reporter, Michael Crick, revealed in 1981 a letter written by a teacher about Farage during his time at Dulwich, referring to him as racist and fascist or neo-fascist. Farage said, "Of course I said some ridiculous things that upset them." Crick asked if these were racist things, and Farage replied, "Not necessarily racist things, it depends how you define it." Well, subsequent to that, there have been more people who have come forward in more recent times and said that he did say some pretty dreadful things. The reasons why these people have come forward now, I have no idea. But I'm fairly certain it won't shift the dial on Nigel Farage, because you know, people who love him will still love him, people who hate him will still hate him, and I don't think there's a grey area with Nigel Farage. I think it's either one side or the other. I don't think there's a middle. So I don't think it'll shift the dial, because those people who would never vote for Nigel would never vote for him anyway. That's not going to happen, and those who are determined to vote for him will vote for him no matter what happens. So that's pretty much where we are on that. So I don't think it will make that much of a difference. But what is interesting is when he was interviewed about it, is his response to it. And it wasn't a denial as such, it was a, well, I didn't kind of mean it like that. I'm paraphrasing, but he basically was saying, well, I didn't directly want to hurt anybody, and I didn't, and the interviewer that interviewed him on ITV was very, very good, I thought, anyway, in not letting him off the hook. And I wish there were more interviews like that interviewing across the political spectrum. But it was perhaps that Nigel, a lot of people are thinking, well, you could have just said, look, it was a different time back then, it was nearly 50 years ago. I probably was a bit of a scrote. I probably did say some horrible things. We all did. I don't stand by that. I don't believe that. And I don't endorse that. Absolutely. But so that's what's got him into a bit of hot water, and that's why more and more people are coming forward to say, actually, he did say something this and he did say that. So that's what's got him apparently into more hot water. And so that's what we've been talking about this morning. Grace joins me now. Good morning, Grace. How are you?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm very blessed, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm very well indeed. Thank you very much. Oh, this microphone is giving me real grief today. Sorry. Right. What do you think about this, Grace? Does it matter that he may or may not have said what he may or may not have said as a 15-year-old or a kid?
I think it does. Now, I spoke to him on a number of occasions years ago when he was working at a particular other radio station. And I remember making the point that I make all the time, so apologies to people who hear me saying it all the time, but he was talking about the flag and whether we have pride in our flag. And I talked about how ultimately, if you trace it back beyond St. George, we've got a cross on our flag, because Jesus died on a cross for our sin, and therefore rather than having pride, I kind of think about how we should probably have some humility. And right now, I think what he needs is some humility. Rather than just kind of brushing it off in the way that he's doing, he could say, I'm sorry for not having enough sensitivity. He could say, I'm sorry that I said some things I regret. It doesn't seem that these accusations are wholly untrue. I think it's pretty clear that he did say some awful things, even if he can't admit to exactly what he's being accused of. It's pretty clear he said some things that he shouldn't have said. So he could at least have the humility to be apologetic to some extent.
Yeah, I do agree with that, actually, because look, it was a different time. Like I said, a lot of stuff, sort of horrible stuff, was more accepted.
It wasn't a time to say gas the Jews. It's never been a time to say that.
No, I agree. But things like that were accepted, not acceptable.
Yeah, I'm glad you've made that distinction, because I've heard a bunch of people today say, "Oh, things were acceptable back then." And I'm thinking, no, they were accepted. They were.
That is a massive difference, right? It's never acceptable to say gas the Jews or to be racist, or it's that in my view that is not acceptable. But 50 years ago it probably was accepted in a classroom or in a playground, that sort of nasty behaviour, but I think you're right, is that, look, he maybe should have just said, look, I can't remember any specifics. I probably wasn't a very nice person. I was showing off. I probably said some horrible things, and if I did and I upset anybody, I'm really, really sorry. That would have been the way to shut this down, actually, because by sort of a half semi sort of denial, like, oh, I didn't mean it to be hurtful, it's kind of a bit cringe, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's just shown absolutely no empathy for people who are victims of racism, including anti-Semitism. I can't imagine how it feels to grow up knowing that my grandparents were nearly murdered for their and therefore my ethnicity. I can't imagine what that feels like, but I would suppose that it's quite a disturbing thing to have on one's psyche. And Farage has just shown no empathy with this man who has, made these comments, and for other people who have experienced anti-Semitism and racism. He could at least talk about abhorring these ideas, even if
you're right about that as well. This could have been a teaching moment. Right, this could have been a moment where he talked to the very far right of the cohorts that support him and said, this is not acceptable. That